Hello, welcome to Sustainability Leads, a podcast where we bring you bold conversations on sustainable business. Today, I'm excited, really excited to have with us Dr. Leila Fourie, the outgoing CEO of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Leila, welcome.
Hi, Ashing, and thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It's great to chat to you.
Yes, so thank you so much. I've been wanting to do this for the longest time, and really great to do this during your last month at the JSC as the outgoing CEO. But before we delve deep into the conversation, I'd just like you to let us know who you are and specifically take us back to your younger years, that young Leila, your aspirations, your passion. Yeah. And if those experiences have led you here and how they've led you to this incredible leadership position.
Yes. Ashing, I firmly believe that our leadership style and who we are and who we've become is always a function of our early years. And I grew up, I come from humble beginnings. I grew up in a very large household, and at a very early age, that taught me compromise. It taught me that anything that you build is rarely built alone. And it taught me that whatever you do has an impact on those around you. And so I feel very fortunate to have learned those lessons early on in life. I'm one of 10, although I didn't grow up with all my siblings. It is a large family, and when there's not much to go around, the lessons you learn around compromise stay with you. And I would say that of all of the lessons that I learned during my childhood, one of stewardship and perhaps servant leadership has really stayed with me. And in many ways, the opportunities and the responsibility and the belief that gets placed in you must be held in trust. And one must do with those as much as one can in a way that gives back to others and that uplifts those around you. And that's what I learned from my early age. My mom and my grandmother were important role models for me, and they role modeled courage, they role modeled discipline and hard work, basic practical examples that really set me up for the leader that I was to become. And when I was early on in my life, when I had my first child, my son was 5 weeks premature, and that taught me. It taught me endurance, it taught me perspective, and it taught me humility, because we would live from milestone to milestone. Early signs of progress meant so much to us. And then 31 years later, my son had my first grandchild, and that taught me that each generation builds on the last. And so we stand on the shoulders of giants that come before us, and those are very important lessons that are as relevant in the workplace as they are in your intimate family relationships. I've also spent a lot of time learning lessons that are far placed from the boardroom table itself. And those are from mountaineering and from climbing. And from that, I've learned trust, and I've learned endurance and grit. And so if I look at how all of these aspects have influenced who I am as a leader, I would say that I've learned stewardship, and I've learned humility and servant leadership. And so from my early years in Johannesburg, growing up in a very large tapestry of people, I've learned grit. From the mountains, I've learned trust. From my grandmother and my mother, I've learned courage. And from my children, I've learned that we are blessed with things that often we don't deserve. And people see in us possibility and dignity and potential far before it actually becomes a reality. And it's our responsibility to ensure that the way we lead offers up that possibility and uplifts and sees dignity in others in the way that you have been supported before you truly achieve or succeed.
No, that's really incredible and insightful. And coming then down to the JSE, those really incredible lessons have shaped your leadership at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. You are leaving the JSE on a very high note, right? I remember your results were out about 2 weeks ago. Double-digit growth, back to back, over 2 years. And you've also served South Africa well, being this patriot, advocating for South Africa, especially in the international investment spaces, supporting government in its advocacy. And I was at your farewell party a few days ago where the governor had this glowing tribute to you and to your legacy. So the stock exchange has considerably grown under your tenure. Please take us back. What are those highlights? What have they been, and what are you leaving behind? Yeah.
Well, I think first out, the exchange is an infrastructure for the country. It's a national contributor to trust, to capital formation, and to savings. And the purpose of the exchange will always outrun any leader. I'm here merely to serve and to make a contribution that ensures that the exchange that I leave is better than the exchange that I took on as a humble leader. And I'd say that there are some exciting components of what's been achieved over the past 6.5 years. The market cap of the JSE, of all listed entities on the JSE, was just over 12.8 actually trillion rand in 2019, January of 2019, and it's now over 24 trillion rand. And so we've seen tremendous growth by some of our listed entities, and it is very humbling to be able to bow out on what is a market high, and markets do go up and down. And what our role is to ensure that when markets are at their busiest, that we offer resilience and that our systems are trusted and that we deliver the purpose that we're meant to deliver. Now, there have been a number of components, 3 components to our strategy. The first has been to ensure that we protect our core purpose and to ensure that our resilience is improved, and our resilience has genuinely improved quite materially. We haven't had an outage in the equity market for 3 years. The system technical debt has all been caught up. We had 21 outages in 2019. We had 3 last year. And so those elements that sound quite boring are really critical, especially when the market value traded is as high as it was. It was 32% up on prior years. We've also, the second area of focus has been around transformation of the exchange. We've used artificial intelligence technology to transform some of our legacy systems. And we're very excited to be pioneering some of that work in a way that really puts South Africa on the map globally. We've also transformed our listings requirements. over multiple changes that we've introduced. The most recent introduction was the simplification of our listings requirements. We've also separated the board into two, a prime and a general segment, to make sure that the listings requirements are fit for purpose. And then finally, on the area that is very important to the UN and to myself, is the sustainability component. Yes. Our sustainability of revenues, we've diversified our revenues quite materially. We've grown our non-trading income by 92% since 2019, and that makes sure that the business is sustainable through up and down cycles. We've also made a massive contribution on climate change, gender equality, and social elements. We have increased the number of students who are able to participate in our simulated trading game from 20,000 in 2019 to now 66,000, and I'm hoping that's going to get to 100,000. We spend an enormous amount of time educating and building financial literacy in the country, and our women conference, which is called She Invests, touches many people, both directly and online. And then, of course, we advocate on the global stage. So my role on the UN Global Compact and also on the ISSB Global Advisory Board, which is has built the S1 and S2 disclosure requirements. It's very important to make sure that the voice of emerging markets and the voice of Africa is built into global standards to avoid unintended consequences and to ensure that South Africa, Africa, and other emerging markets interests and unintended consequences are fully factored in before standards are embedded globally and have negative consequences and marginalize the already marginalized economies.
Those are really great strides, very deliberate in the way that you've approached your season of leadership at the JSE. I still want to go back to, because you even mentioned it, leading with humility or humanity, right? How has that philosophy really, influenced and informed the way that you lead, even before the JSE, I would suppose?
Leading with humanity is a really critical component, and it's actually not a soft element. Most people think that it's all about the numbers, but behind those numbers, there is an element of trust, and trust is created through human interaction. It's the belief that there is a leader who can raise funds and build an organization from a garage environment to a large-scale, multinational listed entity. And it's the belief by savers that indeed there is a return to be had by investing in these organizations. And so there are growth nodes, and those growth nodes are driven by humans at the end of the day. And so I think it's quite naive and linear to think that any growth and any economic development is purely numbers and task-based, because at the end of the day, you need hearts and minds to build a business. And so we've certainly seen that the element of humanity within the country is a core component and a very critical building block for the broader economy. And I think South Africa in many ways is a beacon around using humanity as a central growth node to drive the economy.
Yes, absolutely. So back to the JSE leadership. You are the second female CEO, and your successor is a woman as well. Globally, we still facing barriers. Women in leadership, that is still a hard one for most countries, and we are not doing well. I was actually reading an article Sandra put out saying that in the Fortune 500 companies, there's only 11% women CEOs, and we are seeing a regression. The JSE has stood out, and I'm just on the point of leadership. I know that when we look at the structure of the economy, maybe those statistics are even worse, right? In terms of to what extent are women recognized or given the opportunity to also own. But on the bit of leadership, the JSE has kind of cracked it. How would you influence other organizations to take your examples from the stock exchange?
Well, I think at the outset, it's important to realize that equality around the boardroom table is not a charity, and it's really an important approach to ensure diversified thinking. If you have half of the population excluded from contributing, you become linear and don't encourage diversity of thinking. And any trader or economist knows that diversity is a critical component of a portfolio management. And so the JSE has taken the lead by ensuring, for example, around my Exco table, more than 75% of our Exco members are women. And people hire after their likeness. And so if you ensure that at the top and most senior levels you are well diversified and represented, that tends to flow down below. The JSE in the early 2000s introduced listings requirements that required, and we were on the vanguard in this, we were in the forefront to require that listed entities apply or explain and that they disclose their gender diversity and other elements of diversity around the boardroom table, and that they disclose their objectives or their goals. And this holds executives, it holds non-executives to account. And I think ultimately South Africa is a poster child for entrenching in a very constructive and pragmatic way equality around the boardroom table. And I'm very proud that at the JSE we've been able to mirror that and to embrace that fully. And I can certainly see that decision-making processes are improved as a result of the diversity of thinking that you have around the table. And that's not limited only to gender. It may be your background, it may be race, color, creed, and also your overall thinking style. And so the days of hiring in your likeness where you create an echo chamber are not net good for business.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I just want us to focus a bit on the macro global economic landscape. We saw South Africa on the grey list for a while, and you are part of the team that was part of that advocacy. We are now out of the grey list. How do you, and I know you do it with others, but how do you navigate those complexities around the intersection of finance, policy, business at the national level, but I think most importantly, in advocating for South Africa out there? How do you navigate those, both professionally and at a personal capacity as well?
South Africa, Ashing, is very much a part of the global economy. We are the 19th largest stock exchange by market capitalization, and that means that the positioning of South Africa on the global stage matters. I've worked very closely with private sector, and there is a coalition and an agreement and a collaboration between coalition of the willing between private sector and public sector. I lead a number of initiatives which ensure that we are able to drive a common objective. Now, what we've seen is a number of very important changes that have come through to support the country's positioning globally. You've mentioned coming off the FATF grey list. We work with, under National Treasury's leadership, to ensure that our sovereign rating accurately reflects the underlying risk. We were recently upgraded by S&P, and we anticipate that the developments in the economy will continue to put us in a positive light and hopefully translate into upgrades. We've also seen a tremendous repositioning of South Africa. We were close to 3% in the emerging market index. We are now more than 4 and nearing on 5% of the index. And that means that we suddenly become much more relevant in the global investors' profile. The JSE delivered one of the highest returns, both in developed and developing economies last year. In the all share, we were up 57% in US dollar terms and 63% in the top 40. And that compares to the emerging market index, which was up low 30s, and the rest of the developed world, whether it's S&P or NASDAQ, between 18 and 20% up. So South Africa is suddenly looking like a genuine investment opportunity, and these are all underpinned by structural shifts that we are starting to see in the economy. We are not out of the woods. There is still unacceptably high unemployment. Our growth rates have not yet translated, but the underlying signal, early warning or early indicators like Eskom turning a profit, like Transnet starting to improve their efficiencies, and like corporate South Africa starting to invest in their capex cycle, these are all net positive indicators. And so we've had a long winter, we've had a long period of macroeconomic headwinds, and it finally feels as if the country is starting to turn, and long may it last.
Yes. How do we keep investors positive? What are those things that South Africa needs to continue doing to keep the investment community positive? And on the flip side of that, what is our expectations of investors on how they should view South Africa?
Well, I was on a roadshow with the Governor and the Minister of Finance last week in London, and in fact, a number of those investors said they felt we had underestimated our growth, and they wondered why we were quite so negative about our own country. And so I think the narrative matters, but ultimately what really matters is South Africa needs to shift to a growth mindset. We need to be net job creators, and we need to reduce particularly the youth unemployment rate, which is unacceptably high. And so what we need to do is ensure that we translate our promise into numbers. And what we expect of international investors is that we ironically are being seen as a growth node and a potentially very good place to park their investment flows. And we can see that in the increase in foreign investment. So our equity market has increased. At the beginning of last year, we were at about 28.3% net foreign holdings. That increased to just over 32% at the end of the year, and we are now already up to 34%. And so South Africa is being seen as an attractive opportunity and as a net growth possibility, and especially in the context of what we're seeing as low growth and high indebted countries in the developed world economy.
Absolutely. And so you've been at the JSE for about 7 years?
Yep,
Yes.
6.5 years in this role and
yeah.
15 cumulatively
Before,
over the years.
Awesome. So we are seeing what is happening right now in the global geopolitics. In that entire landscape, we are having fresh wars. The previous conflicts are not sorted yet. So business leaders have to navigate these dynamics. Countries have to navigate these dynamics. What advice would you give companies as they navigate this rapid political, even technological, even sustainability challenges? Because the world seems to move back and forth.
Yeah. Look, there is a lot of noise in the globally macro backdrop. There's noise around geopolitics. Right now we're navigating a very material oil crisis. There is a difficult to predict and very volatile trade environment. And there are ebbs and flows, and we've seen rotations in and out of defensive stocks and in and out of developed world economies and resources. And ultimately, we need to stick to our knitting and we need to manage the controllables. South Africa is fortunately somewhat removed geographically. We have great opportunity in that we are a key point with our deep water ports that creates an opportunity for South Africa to position itself on the global stage as a key pass-through transit point. And we should be doing more to position ourselves in that regard. Insofar as the local economy goes, we are in a much more stable and positive outlook, and the capex investment and the growth in the economy, growth in AI, growth in technology, cloud-based structures, and also investment in climate opportunities are a critical global theme. AI is very much dependent on sustainable power security, and South Africa has many lessons to share around the crises that we've been through around our power economy. And we're in a much more stable position, and we've been able to genuinely invest in renewable energy in a way that many other global counterparts haven't. And so we should stand on those opportunities, and we do need to enable less red tape around SME growth and development. We've done a lot around the listings of larger organizations, and really capex investment is a vote of confidence in the country. And the job creation that comes from such investment is critical to build our positioning in the broader world.
Yeah, no, that's really great. So you moving along soon. I know that you have said publicly you'll still be in the advocacy space. You'll continue on some boards. You're still interested in helping in governance. You're going to sail. But on the issue of the UN Global Compact, I know you are staying on as our board member at the global level. That is an important sustainability platform. What message, what call to action would you have for companies out there who may not be in the Global Compact yet, or are not in the community of sustainability practitioners yet? Do you have a message for companies out there?
Ashiang, the UN Global Compact is the largest compact globally in terms of membership around sustainability. Sustainability and the responsibility of corporate South Africa or global corporates to invest in long-term growth and development is not something that should be affected by short-term either political views or short-term trends. Ultimately, our economies are built on a structural social compact, on a well thought through renewable and climate sensitive growth trajectory, and becoming part of a global compact such as the UNGC really lifts the credibility of the organization in a global sense, and it's a formal indicator and a formal mark around the principled leadership that exists in the organization. And it's much more than principles, it's actually tied to economic growth. Without the enablement of labor and the inclusivity of labor, without focusing on climate impacts and climate-ready initiatives, we cannot grow. And so many people previously would have thought that climate change and social issues are an issue of principle. And yes, they are an issue of principle, but they are actually a formal structural component of economic growth. And without management, appropriate management of our climate situation, without appropriate management of the labor workforce, growth is not going to be enabled. So I would encourage all organizations who haven't yet made that step to commit to the UN Global Compact in South Africa to seriously look at what is required. It's basically a disclosure requirement of what many organizations are likely to already be doing. But it gives structure and it gives formality to the crucial drive, which is to make sure that we are building a sustainable economy in South Africa.
Yes, absolutely. Sustainability is good for business. Leila, before I let you go, what next?
So Ashiying, as I've said a few times, although I'm stepping down, I'm not stepping away.
Yeah.
From business. I plan to give back to something that's bigger than myself. I will continue on the UNGC, which the Secretary General has graciously enabled, and I will continue on the YES Youth Employment Service Board, which looks after the youth of our country, and I'll continue on the Henley Advisory Board, which is a passion of mine, academia, giving back. And I'll sit on a couple of boards, locally and possibly internationally. And then, of course, I'll spend time on the water, sailing, and also climbing. Yeah. But I'm still very much connected, engaged, and very committed to the cause of our country and to our global economic welfare of our planet.
Oh, that's really amazing. Sailing around the world, I guess.
Yes, indeed.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Leila.
Thank you,
so much for giving us the time, for engaging with me on this podcast during your last month at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. I really personally do appreciate your time. Thank you so much, and all the best as you move on. Thank you, everyone, and that brings us to the end of today's episode of Sustainability Leads. Thank you.